Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. Today, our very special guest is Tim Montague, the very super triple famous Clean Power Hour podcaster, one of the biggest renewable energy podcasters in the universe. We're going to get into the psychology of Tim Montague. We're going to see how Tim works. We're going to see if Tim is real. Is Tim AI? Hey, Tim, are you real or AI today?
Well, the question, Sean, is anything real?
You know, I have to see if I could rewind my life, and I'll tell you after I rewind my life. All right.
It's all a simulation.
Uh-huh.
I am somewhat in that camp, but
Yeah.
I have no proof. So
Yeah, well, it's just like, where the heck did this universe come from anyway? That's the question. It's just like appeared out of nowhere, like boom.
Yeah.
Big bang.
There are many mysteries.
Whatever. Yeah. So I want to get into maybe not going back as far as the Big Bang, but the history of the Clean Power Hour. So how long have you been around, Tim, with the Clean Power Hour? I mean, not since you were born. I don't need to know how old you are.
I started podcasting in the solar industry in 2017. My show was called SolarWorks for Illinois.
Oh.
I was working for a big EPC called Continental Energy Solutions. Then they were just Continental Electric. They were a fourth generation electrical contractor that got into solar. They were an early adopter. And I was really very fortunate to meet Brian Houck, the president of Continental Energy Solutions, the solar division now. And I immediately recognized that I wanted to do a solar show. And it was explicitly at that time focused on potential customers, meaning facility owners, right? Because we here in the Midwest, Sean, we're a little slow to the game. We're 10 years behind our friends like yourself on the coast, both West Coast and East Coast, right? Everything comes last to the Midwest, even though there are many tech-friendly people here. And I'm a technologist. I love technology, sustainability, and people. So anyway, Clean Power Hour emerged from SolarWorks for Illinois. It actually morphed into the Solar Podcast, which is now somebody else's show. And then I started a segment with John Weaver, the journalist for PV Magazine. Maybe you know John.
Yeah, I've been on your podcast with him.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
We did something in person, you and I, when we were in Colorado 2 years ago with John. But anyway.
Yeah. And I remember one time we did one with John at a conference. We were like on the conference floor.
Oh, yeah, right. At RE Plus, that was 2 years ago, I guess, in Nico's booth. Must have been, right?
Or no, it was at your booth. You had a booth.
Oh, that's right. At Vegas, I had a booth.
Okay. Yeah.
Wow. So many conferences.
And then I remember you were like, watch my booth. And then I think me and Brian Hayden were there or something like that.
Yes.
And then I saw you later and I was like, yeah, we sold all your microphones,
Yeah, that was a trip having a booth at RE Plus. I'm not going to do that again. I am going to start recording in other people's booths at RE Plus. I'm going to bring a film crew and run around and do interviews, but primarily with my major sponsor, CPS America, who I'm so grateful for because my podcast wouldn't exist, honestly, without CPS. And so they're a good friend of the show.
Awesome.
But yeah, got working with John. That's how I started the Clean Power Hour, was with John Weaver, which was a news roundup that we did weekly. And we just covered the news of the day, really.
Yeah, I love reading his PV Magazine articles and stuff. He's a real nice guy.
Yeah, he's very prolific. And he's a legit solar professional, which is great. And, he's a solar installer, developer. He's got a resi company. He's got a commercial and community solar company. So he covers a lot of parts of the industry. And I'm kind of bummed that we let that fall by the wayside. But, life changes, things happen. And so John and I aren't doing that segment anymore. And now I'm just doing my interview show. Although I am about to kick off another news roundup with I'm struggling to remember his last name. He's got a difficult last name, but Joe Marhamati.
Oh, yeah.
At Sunboy.
He's been on the podcast.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Joe and I are going to do a LinkedIn Live. I think we're going to do it weekly, starting in January.
Yeah, Joe and Hervé.
Yeah, Joe's the only person I know at Sunboy.
Yeah, Hervé is his business partner.
Okay.
And I've had them both on the show, and I see them around the solar shows. They're real nice guys. And so they make this app that coordinates all the different inverters and stuff like that. So you can just have like one app for your customers. And then,
yes,
you know, if you can have like SolarEdge and Enphase and SMA and everybody else on the same app. So you don't have to like log in a million different times.
Yeah, if you're a solar installer, you want your customers logging into the Shawn White solar app, not the SolarEdge solar app, right? And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of what Sunboy has done is they create this white labeled app so that customers can remember who their installer is, right? Otherwise, they think SolarEdge or SunPower is their solar installer, and that's not going to serve your brand as an installer.
Yeah, just good marketing stuff. And then also kind of takes care of them because then if there's something that goes down or bad communications, I think you would know about it better probably.
Well, yeah, they can message you in the app. So it is good for that relationship and finding a signal on O&M. And it's like in solar, I think historically, solar installers thought of themselves as a one-off sale, right? They sold the system and then they moved on. Well, now we're transitioning to a solar plus world, right? You sell the solar, you sell an O&M contract, and then you also sell them a battery and an EV charger and a heat pump and maybe a new roof.
Yep.
So from one thing to six.
Mm-hmm. So I was wondering too about like you said you did your old podcasts. Are they still out there? Can people still listen to them?
Yeah, they're out there. The main way to find them is on YouTube.
Do you have links to it from your website or anything like that?
Not from my website, but I can send you links.
Yeah, we'll put them in the notes or something. It'd be kind of cool
Sure.
for all the big Tim Montague fans can like go out there and listen to some good old 2017 stuff and like check you out when you're a little bit more green and stuff like that.
Do you ever do solo content, Sean?
On the podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the way that mine evolved is like I teach all these classes and stuff, and I'm a super double tasker. So like I make videos for my classes, and then I would throw them on YouTube and stuff. And I was like, hey, let's just this podcast thing, I could throw them up there too. In fact, the first thing that I ever did before I even knew what a podcast was, I think, is I recorded myself reciting Article 690 of the NEC, and I just posted it on my website. And I think that might have been my first podcast, if you
That's
could
awesome.
call it a podcast. And that goes back to, I think, about 2008. But it was, I didn't call it a podcast, but I guess it kind of was, sort of in a weird way. And
So
so,
if I Google Shawn White Article 690, I'll find it.
yeah, I think I called it Radio 690, something like that. And I've done it for 690 for a number of times. So probably like 2008, 2011, 2014, and keep adding three. Like every time the NEC comes out, I recite 690. And I even did something recently just on the International Fire Code for energy storage systems. And I read 1207 out of the IFC for energy storage systems. And sometimes, I try to read it like poetry. It was kind of funny. Like I would be like, greetings and readings from Article 690, and try to read it with like if I was out at a poetry reading at an open mic night or something like that. And then, because it's like super boring stuff. And I also kind of like made it so I could listen to it. Because like learning about 690 and stuff, it's not like you just like read it once and you know everything. So I would record it for myself. Like I would say, like to double task, I record it for myself and then like, hey, I'll just go post this too. I'll put it in my classes. I'll put it on my website. And then I eventually made a podcast. Then I started taking pieces out of my classes and putting them on the podcast. So it was kind of like a solo thing in the beginning,
I get it. I'm intrigued. I'm going to take your 690 podcast and feed it into Google Notebook LLM and see what comes out.
Okay, that'll be interesting.
It'll be good.
Yeah, yeah.
It's super impressive what these AI tools can use. I'm down with the AI tools as long as they are narrow, right? I don't want the super AI, the AGI or artificial general intelligence. I want a super smart narrow AI that I can leverage in my daily life.
I think I'm going to tell AI to read Article 690 like Dave Chappelle would, or something crazy like that. I don't know. And interpret it.
Good.
I don't know. Then I would probably get canceled, so I've got to be really careful. It's like
Oh my goodness.
somebody else, or it's just I'm having a lot of fun with like making like really weird, obscure things. I just started doing images too. Like I was making slides today, and I was like making like UL 9540A fire testing of the world's largest energy storage system, and they're just showing like this big picture with this like big giant huge battery with all these people in lab coats standing around, and then they get the number wrong. Instead of 9540, it's like 9550A. And I'm like, no, you got the number right. And it's like the stupid AI image generator
Oh,
can't do text. You think they
yeah,
would be a little
right.
bit smarter than that.
Yeah, I haven't had much luck with image generators, I have to say. For text generation, good results.
Yeah. Oh, it's pretty cool, like the image generator stuff, but it's just not accurate. It's not what you expect, but there's like some weird things. Like the other day, somebody was like doing a Tesla with legs, and it was drinking electricity or something like that. It was just like hilarious.
That's kind of creepy.
Uh huh.
A Tesla with legs, I don't know.
Uh huh. Yeah, but well, just you got to talk to those image generators and
What does Tesla call their robot? They've got some weird name
Optimus.
for it.
Is that it?
Oh, Optimus, yeah.
My name is Optimus Prime.
Yeah, that's probably going to take over the world. All that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, now we know that is Elon's goal. He doesn't want to just occupy Mars, he wants to occupy Earth.
Yeah, well, as soon as like Earth goes bad because of the robots and the robots kill all the people, at least we'll have another planet to hang out on.
I'm also down with going to Mars, just not me. I want others to go to Mars. Unfortunately, a lot of people are going to die going to Mars. The first waves, right? Just like they did going to distant places here on Earth.
1492 or whatever,
eh,
Magellan, all those people.
Yep, yep. And I mean, that is in our blood, apparently, right? Like
Yeah.
we just love to go into the unknown for some reason. It has served humanity very well. We spread across the globe with very crude tools like sailboats.
Yeah, kind of the most amazing thing is like how they inhabited all the Pacific Islands.
Oh, I
Like
love the
just like
Polynesian.
thousands of miles on little boats and didn't even know it was there. They just like, I was thinking like, what does the island get too crowded and they flip a coin and then somebody has to just go take off and 1 in 10 might find land, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how many didn't make it, right? They made it to Easter Island, one of the most isolated places on Earth, but how many tried to go and didn't make it? We don't know, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the thought of just getting into a small boat with, some plants, some pigs, some rats, some crops you're going to plant on the other end, and just saying, well, we're going to go for it and survive on the other end. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super brave. So if you think you have problems, just reflect on what some of our ancestors have done, and I think your problems will feel relatively small in the greater scheme of things.
Yeah.
We have such a cushy life now, Sean. Thanks to fossil fuels. I like to say that on my show. I'm not anti-fossil fuel. I'm pro-energy transition, but I'm not anti-fossil fuel. Those things gave us the good life that we have. We live like kings.
Well, they could have just developed PV sooner too.
Well, I mean, you can say that, but how do you skip from whale oil to PV? Like
Oh, that
that's,
we could have skipped whales too. We just
I mean,
like
it would be nice. It would be nice for the whales if we could have done that, but
like once the aliens came and built the pyramids, they could have just given us solar cells and that would have been it.
wow, you had to go there. So I was on a flight returning from San Diego. Shout out to San Diego. I love San Diego. I went to college in San Diego, Sean.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I
At
love
UC
it
San
down there too.
Diego.
Yeah.
My old stomping ground. My youngest son, Finn, who's a solar project manager now, was born in my dining room in Pacific Beach in San Diego, a little beach community inside the city of San Diego.
Wow,
But
in the dining room. Okay.
yeah, we did a home birth, water birth. So you rent a tub, you hire a doula. Okay. It's like, it's got to be supervised. You need professionals in the room, but it totally worked out. And I was in the tub too. Obviously not doing the hard work. I was just doing the catching. Uh, but I watched this movie. There's a movie, well, it's a series called Manhattan Alien Abduction or something like that. And it talks about this researcher who became obsessed with aliens visiting the Earth and abducting people. And he found a bunch of people who were convinced that they'd been abducted and actually had like foreign objects inserted into their navel cavity. It's a really trippy movie. I recommend it. I'm not convinced yet, but they did show an x-ray of this woman with something in her nasal cavity that appeared to be a foreign object. But they didn't explain, well, why didn't they just operate on her and remove it and really find out what it was? They just kind of stopped there. Like she thought something was wrong and
Okay.
They took an x-ray and there's something there. Okay, well, I'm like, get to the bottom of it.
So I was thinking of maybe also we could talk about like, so we both teach some classes for HeatSpring, and
Yeah.
we kind of like share something together that is like a pathway for the NABCEP PV technical sales certification. So maybe talk about your class on HeatSpring.
Yeah. When I was getting certified, I realized that there was a
So
lack of,
you have the NABCEP PV technical sales certification.
correct. This was back in like 2018, 2019. I was taking these classes from Solar Energy International, these organizations, and there was a lot of info about residential solar, but there was not much on commercial solar. And so I was inspired to create a course, and I created a course. I have two courses on HeatSpring. One is a free course on qualifying commercial leads and projects, and then a longer course. It's a 5.5 hour course on selling and developing commercial solar or CNI solar. So anyway, because I had accumulated this body of knowledge over, about 5 years at the time when I created the course on what it is to develop and sell commercial industrial solar, because resi and commercial are like apples and oranges, right? The equipment is different. The sales cycle is different. How you do a site evaluation is very different. And that's why I went there. And I love HeatSpring. It's very user friendly. And, Brian is just so easy to work with. So if you're into the built environment and sustainability, check out HeatSpring. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, you know what? Recently I've been doing this other class from a different organization. It's actually not even solar. It's like electrical stuff. And it's like I'm going on the website or the app and stuff like that. And it's like every time I leave the computer for 10 minutes and I come back, it's like I have to start over again, log in, all this stuff. And then I have to, figure out where I left off and go to the 7th video and go to 20 minutes and 50 seconds. Or, it's very complicated. And one of the things I really like about HeatSpring is it just kind of remembers where you are. And you go in and you're just like, oh, if you were like on video number 17 halfway through, you're just exactly there when you come back. And if you want, you could rewind any video and do something 100 times. I'm always learning as more than anybody. And I listen to things and record things. And I listen to myself even. And certain things I can rewind until I get it, And I really like that about this online on-demand training stuff is pretty cool. Yeah.
It's a game changer. I love online learning. I'm passionate for it. I'm preparing to update my course to include more storage because when I did it, I didn't touch on storage very much. And now, as you know, right, and as your listeners know, it's a solar plus world, and storage is the first plus. Solar and batteries are just like peanut butter and jelly. So all of us solar professionals have to be storage professionals as well.
Yep, I'm constantly updating my classes. I have 33 of them right now, and it's a full-time job, just updating classes. I'm getting to a point where like I go, oh, I got a great idea for a new class, and I'm like, better just make my classes up to date. I don't want to get bad reviews or it's like I want to like really especially focus on my classes that are the more popular ones and help people get NABCEP certified and keep those ones up to date as much as possible. One of the problems I have too, though, is sometimes like we have NABCEP exams being based on the 2017 NEC, and here we are doing 2023. And so it's kind of odd, like some of these things that I'm doing, I'm like teaching people, I'm skipping the 2020, doing 2017 and 2023. And apparently, like at least for the NABCEP PVIP exam, they're supposed to go straight to 2023 from 2017. So you know what, people? 2020 doesn't matter. No, California is on the 2020, and a lot of places still are on the 2020 NEC.
Yeah, we probably are too here in Illinois.
We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Sean White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSean, that's solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his HeatSpring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show.
I love online learning. I'm always amazed, Sean, how many people don't know about HeatSpring or NABCEP, like those two things. I'm like, really? If you're interested in solar or sustainability, both.
Yeah, I think not. I don't run into those people that much, probably because the way that I meet people is they're trying to get NABCEP certified. And that's so when I meet people, they're just like, yeah, I really got to get that next NABCEP certification. And I'm working a lot on the ESIP. That's the ESIP, or Energy Storage Installation Professional Exam. So far, at the time of this recording, there's 10 people that have it. And I think 9 or 10 of them came through my class. And so I've just put in a ton of work into like making that class good. And it's like a relatively new certification. I was the first one to take the exam in January. And so that's keeping me pretty busy. But then, of course, I have to keep my other classes updated and all that kind of stuff too. It does get a little bit tiresome. And, you know, we're like, if they're on the NABCEP's on the 2017, and then people are thinking that I'm teaching stuff that's outdated. And it's like, well, if you want to pass the test, you know, and then I'll just talk about compare and contrast two different versions of the code anyway. That's also just a good way of doing it.
Well, I'm glad you brought up ESIP because I have a question. You know, here in Illinois, we have a generous storage incentive, and many states now, I mean, a handful of states, California, Massachusetts, New York, Illinois, have incentives for batteries. And in Illinois, you can dramatically shorten the simple payback period of a solar and storage project by adding storage, or a solar project by adding storage. But there's this thing about AC versus DC coupling, and I'm curious what you make of this, because like in Illinois, our incentive, it's $250 per kWh. Okay, so it's quite generous. And a battery pays for itself in a couple of years with that kind of an incentive. But technically, you can only get the incentive on a DC coupled battery, meaning the battery is charging from DC directly from the solar.
Yeah, I think that's silly because it's all happening behind the meter, even if you're AC coupling.
Right.
And you can like program it to do exactly the same thing. I think it either AC coupling, DC coupling, whatever. If you think about it too, like in some places you have non-exporting systems. You go to Hawaii, if you had a whole megawatt at your house of inverters and batteries and PV and, you know, megawatt and megawatt hour, all that kind of stuff, and you were non-exporting, as far as the utility knows, if you're not exporting, you should be able to put that on your like apartment, you know, not that anybody would, but you're not exporting. So that's, you know, it's like we have the technology, you know, like limiting it to DC coupled is just like either it is a conspiracy or, you know, like somebody's just trying to make it harder for people, or else it's just not really understanding.
That's what I think. I think somebody gamed the system and is trying to limit or exclude certain manufacturers.
Yeah, I think that it's probably some people in the Hoffa family over there in Chicago, and they're like, they have big stock in a DC coupled system company.
So let's go a little further down the storage rabbit hole, though, and talk about non-exporting, or what I tend to call it non-injection. For some reason, I just glom onto that expression. You know, a traditional solar project, right? The production over the year is a big U-shaped curve, right? It's greater in the summer and it's lesser in the winter. And as a result, when you design a PV system, you're designing it to overproduce in the summer. You're spinning your meter backwards in the summer, and it's underproducing in the winter. And if you have net metering, which not all places do, like California, I mean, you have this thing called NEM3, but it's basically no net metering. So you're incentivized to install a battery so you can absorb extra electrons and then utilize them locally, right? Because those electrons can be high value. And then you can do stuff like charge the battery at night if you need to charge the battery with very cheap electrons, right? When it's cheaper to produce electricity, right? Like
if
midnight,
they let you, yeah.
Right. So what are the methods that you're fond of for keeping a solar plus storage system from non-injecting? Is a battery alone typically going to be enough, or do you also have to install some additional hardware?
Do you mean like to coordinate everything, like some brains or something like that?
To truly keep solar electrons from flowing onto the grid. Because, for example, if your battery's fully charged and it's noon o'clock and the solar's cranking, if you don't have some additional hardware, how do you, what's the expression, you bring the accelerator down?
Yeah, so like where I'm sitting right now, if somebody has a battery, they are not allowed to charge their battery with brown polluted electrons, like electrons from the grid. You're allowed to charge your battery with solar, but not those brown electrons, with one exception. If there's like a windstorm and it's dry, or they think a tree is going to fall over or something like that, and they expect that there's a chance that the power might go out, then they'll let you charge your battery off the grid. But they pretty much don't let you do that. And so there's just different places that have different rules. And there's just, it's like these days, you just plug stuff in and it works. It's just like, so your battery management system is connected to the internet, and the person that sold it to you knows how to work with your utility, and you're not supposed to charge your battery with those grid electrons, which is kind of silly, because to me, it's like if they need those, if the energy is easier to come by, then you should be able to take those electrons. And then when they need it worse, they need it more, they should be able to use them. And you can in some instances where it's like a virtual power plant and stuff like that. So kind of my theory on what's happening here is it's just like, I don't necessarily know if it's a conspiracy for these things, or it's just like people don't really understand and they're learning, and the policy has to catch up with the technology. And there's a huge demand for this kind of stuff. And I think in 10 years from now, or even less, it'll be just super common to be able to take the grid and put it into your house batteries and your car batteries and all that kind of stuff, and then use that to sell back to the grid when the grid really needs it. So instead of the grid paying something like $800 a megawatt hour, that's 80 cents a kilowatt hour, when there's some kind of like peak heat wave to keep the air conditioners going from some peaker plant that they only turn on a couple hours a year, instead of them doing that, they can just buy it from your car, or whatever's, your little energy storage system on the wall, or turn off your electric hot water heater for an hour, or turn off your air conditioner for 20 minutes, and coordinate all that with your virtual power plant, which I kind of think of it as a virtual power plant provider. And they just kind of coordinate things for you, and you probably can have settings on your app so you don't have any problems. So like you're like, oh, I'm going on a big long trip tomorrow, let's make sure the battery doesn't get discharged today, or need to be ready. And so it's just like a lot of policies and things like that have to catch up. But there is.
You think it's very simple, just off the shelf?
Yeah, there is like politics and stuff too. You got to, especially in California. So you have the big utility, the biggest one in the country, PG&E, and then you get net metering 3, and you can go on and open secrets and see who they've been giving money to. But that's not really a conspiracy, because we all know it, and it's kind of our fault because people elect people that let that happen. And they pay for political ads, and people are gullible enough to vote because of some stupid ad. It's our fault for being that gullible.
And what if you don't have a battery? So if you just have solar alone, and when you Google this problem, how to have a non-injecting solar project. Okay, yeah, you could install an automatic transfer switch and make the solar island perhaps, but well, I'm curious what you think. I think some inverters might be smart enough to not backfeed, but typically you're going to have to install some additional hardware, like what's called a Schweitzer Relay. Have you heard of that device?
I'm not sure Schweitzer, but like you just put a CT on something and the inverter will just work off the maximum power point, and sort of like clipping a little bit. And that's not unusual, especially back when batteries were too expensive and people were putting, let's say that you have a lot of load and you could use a 100 kilowatt PV system, but you're only got enough roof space for 10 kilowatts, but you're still going to get that 10 kilowatts. So you just put a CT by the meter, and just in case that there would be ever that 1 10-minute span during the whole year where you would be exporting because it was a holiday or something, then what would happen is your inverter would just limit export. And I think that if you look at some of these places like Germany, Hawaii, and Australia, they were doing that a long time before other people. And it's essentially a type of an energy management system or a power control system. And so it's pretty easy to make non-export systems. In fact, I know a guy that's in the Midwest And he doesn't do everything by the book. And he will go install a system. And then before he gets the permit to operate, he just programs it so it won't export. And so it'll still work without exporting. And then the utility won't know the difference.
Yeah. That's the bottom dollar here is that you can reduce your interconnection costs. Sometimes the utility is going to come back. In C&I solar, the grid operator may say, well, you need to upgrade the conductors from your location to a substation down the road. And that could be very expensive. And so non-injection is an important tool to have in your toolbox. And I'd love to talk to your friend because I know one methodology. I've talked to some inverter manufacturers. It's not a standard out of the box for the inverter manufacturers to in real time offer this in a robust manner. But there are technologies like Schweitzer Relays, and I'm just curious what your friend is using.
Yeah. Oh, just like I've seen him do it with Solar Edge. And so he just like the stuff you get from Solar Edge is like there's a little CT and a little thing that you communicate with and that communicates with the CT and the inverter. And then it monitors and you can set it for when you stop exporting. So like if you're going to just let it take, you might not want to get close enough to 0 amps. Maybe you do it for 5 amps or whatever it is, just so you're not exporting. And it's pretty simple. And I think it's so common that all the inverter companies have that kind of a solution.
Well, I want to hear from your listeners what they think about this. And if Sean is right, I hope you are right, Sean, but I have a feeling that it's more complicated than that. And that maybe there are some manufacturers, but I don't think it's an out of the box for all of them.
Well, maybe what we can do is we can do a podcast together and we will get some inverter manufacturers and we'll have them tell us about how they can limit export.
Yeah. I mean, this is a really geeky topic, but it is an important topic. I don't mean to hijack the conversation, so we can move on.
No, that's good. No, it's always a good topic, and I think it's like really good for people to know. And it is one of those things for me. I'm like doing the code and all that kind of stuff, so I could talk about the code with that. But yeah, let's get some people and let's talk to them about how they do that. And I'm pretty sure they all do that. And then another thing too is you can coordinate these things where you like say you have other ways to store energy, like you heating up hot water with your electric hot water heater. That's a different type of stored energy. Charging your car. And you got these companies like Span and Lumen and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got Enphase and Solar Edge and all these other companies too that are doing similar things to what Span and Lumen can do. And that's not only just limiting export, but, sort of like diversion loads, but you're not really off grid.
So I'm really happy you mentioned this. And just FYI, I do have a hard stop at the top of the hour, but there's a company called Alexity, Elexity. Have you heard of this company?
Alexity, no?
Yeah, because they've made a system to use the whole building as a energy device. So you mentioned some things, hot water heaters, batteries in EVs, you've got refrigeration. And so when you think about the building and all of those things in the building as energy storage devices, you really need a platform like Alexity. And we're doing a webinar in January or February. We don't have a date yet with CPS America and Alexity. And we're going to talk about one of their projects for a school district, I think. And it's a really cool platform, though, because it makes it easy for the end user, for the building owner, to basically monetize some other aspects, beyond just having solar and a battery. Now you can regulate what the building's doing during certain hours and reduce your demand charges, for example, or capacity charges, right? You preload the HVAC, say you cool the building down when you know that there's going to be high demand charges at 2:00 in the afternoon. And then you can turn off the AC for a couple of hours and thereby reduce your extra charges. So anyway, check it out. I can introduce you if you want to bring them on your show.
Awesome. Okay.
No affiliation. They're friends of CPS's.
And so that's your main sponsor, Chint Power System, CPS. And my sponsor is me. So,
Well,
like cut out the
we'll have to
middleman.
change that, Sean. Well, if you want. I mean, that's the thing. Not everyone wants sponsors, but I'm very happy having corporate sponsors.
Yeah, like I need a $1 billion diamond sponsor. If anybody's got a billion out there, that's what I'm looking for. For $1 billion, I'll sell whatever they got, No. But
It's totally possible.
but yeah, so like I just sponsor my own. But it is like I do, I teach all these classes, so I think it's worth it. That's kind of the way that I do it. And you are more like a podcaster first, and podcasting for me is kind of like my side job.
It's a both and for me because really, I make money as a consultant to the industry. I work with solar installers, helping them learn about and go further faster into large CNI. So if you're a residential and small commercial installer, but want to get into large CNI, say 500 kW plus projects or community solar projects, the tools and technologies that we use in that space are very, very different than the resi and small commercial. And so that's one of my value propositions. And then I make money doing training like you do, but that's a very small percentage of my
Yeah, that was really fun doing training with you up there at the Oregon Solar Conference. I always love that conference, with the goat yoga and all that going on.
Thank you for introducing me to goat yoga.
Yeah, your life will never be the same. So I know that it's getting up on the top of the hour and you got to leave, and you're the clean power hour guy. So we don't want it to be like the clean power hour and a half when I talk to you. So any final words?
I would just say, I would love to hear from your listeners. I'm not sure who they are. I hope some of them are also my listeners. But anyway, it's a real pleasure getting to see you again, Sean. Looking forward to Intersolar in San Diego in February. And then RE Plus Northeast also in February in Boston.
I'll be there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a great 2025. I say, let's grow solar and storage.
Let's grow. Yep, I'm going to be at a whole bunch of conferences. Even this year, I've got tickets to go to SNEC in Shanghai and Intersolar Germany and maybe a couple other international ones too. So, but yeah, so thanks so much, Tim Montague. Look for links in the show notes. Easy to find you. You're all over the place in the podcast. Just look up Clean Power Hour. So thanks a lot. And thanks for listening to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. And go to Solar, SEAN, that's solarshawn.com. And you can check out all my NABCET prep classes, HeatSpring classes, and you could even go to my website and find links to Tim's classes over at HeatSpring. Woo!
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean.
All right. Thanks, Tim. Have a good day.